Oh, well, it's the Frontline and a very warm welcome. My name is Simon Kaggwa, Njala. Tonight, we'll be having a digest on the sticky issues around post-election. We've done 2 months since the country went into that very contentious election. But how is the country picking up the pieces and what remains unresolved? These are the issues that we'll be talking about. Apparently, there are ongoing behind-the-scene talks aimed at creating a level, maybe, of negotiation, of a fair ground, a middle ground on the way forward for the country. But will they bear any fruit? As we speak, the principal of the National Unity Platform, who also contested, was the lead contender in the race against President Yoweri Museveni, is outside, is out of the country. There are reports that negotiations are underway for his return. How true or false are these reports? Well, joining me tonight, my panelists, Counsel Semujju, a member of the National Unity Platform and a lawyer, Ambassador Adonia Ayebare, Uganda's representative to the United Nations, a diplomat himself, Honorable Jack Sabiti, a veteran politician and one of the top leaders in the Forum for Democratic Change, with Honorable Ibrahim Semujju Nganda, Member of Parliament, Kira Municipality, and the Secretary General of the PFF. Good to have you all and a very good evening.
It's a pleasure.
Ambassador Adonia, is it true there are behind-the-scenes talks where you are involved with the principal of the National Unity Platform?
I don't know about that. I've seen it in the media, but like all of these things, I can't deny or confirm. But as far as I'm aware, nothing much is going on.
How do you gauge the political mood now that Robert Kyagulanyi fled the country? Besigye is in prison. There are quite a number of political prisoners and a number of thorny issues that remain unresolved after January.
You know, where I stand, I mean, Uganda is stable. Uganda's standing internationally is excellent. The country moves on, meets its international obligations in peacekeeping. So we are good citizens of the world. Okay, of course, there is always domestic issues to deal with, but that is the preserve of Ugandans to figure out how they address whatever problems or contradictions that are within our society.
Honorable Semujju, what is your rating or your evaluation of the state of affairs 2 months down the road?
I still see tear gas and anti-riot trucks parked at most of the roundabouts in Kampala. The soldiers and policemen who were patrolling Kampala, I think majority have been withdrawn. There can be pretense on the side of government because government always wants to create an impression that everything is okay. I think for purposes of stabilizing the economy, especially after election, a lot of money having been spent. But this government of Museveni himself, who got 70-something% of the election, is still behaving as if they are a suspect. Because, I mean, if things are okay, people have settled, they're at work. So what are anti-riot trucks and tear gas trucks still doing? You come to my area, they are still there. You go to Karere, they are still there. You go to Nansana. So there is a pretense that things are okay, they are calm. But people are under government. Because once people can keep quiet, just keeping quiet. But the possibility of exploding will always be there. I remember Father Carlos Rodriguez, Spanish priest, was in northern Uganda for a very long time. He went to Rwanda and said Rwanda was a powder cage. One day it will explode. Of course, they were very angry with him. You can silence people and they keep quiet, but you will know that I have just silenced them. And I think Museveni and his group know that. So this artificial calmness that we enjoy, they know that behind it, the anger is brewing.
Are there any thorny issues that you feel are being ignored or not discussed to the depth required?
I said here, I have participated as a candidate in 3 elections. I have never seen an election that is grossly mismanaged. The Electoral Commission surrendering completely to the military. In the area where I am an MP, at least for the next 1 month, the mayor, the division mayors, councillors, NRM were number 3 in most of these elections, just declared themselves the winner. And that happened in many areas. You saw what happened in Mukono, you saw what happened in Kampala. So in these areas, in most of the urban areas, the NRM people were simply declared. People who turned up to vote no, because they still have declaration forms. You saw candidates in Wakiso at the Tare Center. They go with the declaration form, they announce the loser, and then they drag you out like you were a thief. So that anger, you may suppress it, but it will remain underground. So issues of stealing elections, issues of militarizing not only elections, but our lives. As I speak to you now, I was attempting to present this matter to Parliament today. There are demolitions going on all over the country. They are demolishing
in the name of trade order.
In the name of trade order. I told an NRM minister that you guys, you need to go to Butavika. These people that you are saying should be ordered, go and see where they sleep. They sleep in slums, they come to town on borders. So you are telling them there must be order only where they are working. There is no order where they are staying. So what do you start with? Do you start, that's what I told the Semujju when they are closing school, that they don't have pit latrines. I told the report of the audit, report of National Bureau of Statistics. You go to Karamoja, 60% of people don't have even pit latrines. So, and now you say they must have them at school.
Thank you. I'll certainly get back to you. Honorable Sabiti, do you agree that there is a bit of a political impasse in the wake of the election?
Well, I see a lot of soldiers in town, which is a little bit unusual. I've always been asking, what are these soldiers for? We have concluded elections. Is there something happening? So maybe it is the state to tell us why there are so many soldiers around, if there is some trouble. People need to cool down, to get out of fear. Elections were concluded. Many people complained on our part as a party. We felt this was not an election. It was just allocating votes to different people, particularly the government people. So I think government should come out and explain why this environment, why people are getting scared looking at soldiers, at the policemen everywhere.
Okay. By the look of things, there are issues to do with political freedoms, the shrinking civic space, the state of affairs generally, a despondent populace, and certainly uncertainty over whether we are into transition or everything. Do you think the time is right for a national dialogue of some kind?
There has always been need for that dialogue from the past to date. There are things we have not sorted out as a country. People complain of dictatorship, use of force, stealing elections, disrespect for the rule of law. And in my opinion, there is a need for government to think hard about how Uganda should be governed. These elections that we have gone through, I think every sincere Ugandan would say they were unfairly done. Dressing the whole country from Karamoja to Chisoro, everybody being given a yellow shirt or a yellow dress to appear as if the whole country is yellow, and then you cheat these elections and you say, I have won, and you bring soldiers around to make sure nobody talks, says anything. I think there is need for those in government to think of, can we sit down and discuss the future of this country? I think it is necessary.
Thank you. Councillor Muizi, how much do you have to contend with as counsel for the National Unity Platform Party and as a political player, given that today you have heaps of cases post-election, you have unrest within the party, we gather there is a bit of disagreement here and there, your principal is out of the country, and the issue of political prisoners?
Well, Simon, first, everyone will agree we have a despondent society, a sense of uncertainty and confusion post-election. And it is not about to be resolved if we continue to see the government putting a straight face to state things are okay. As a lawyer in the National Unity Platform, the journey that I've walked since the election period started, if I'm to narrate it, first, we were faced with a problem pre-nomination. Several of our candidates being picked up by drones, prospective candidates. A few did not manage to nominate. As we were struggling with that lot, then we were faced with those who managed, under harsh circumstances, to nominate, being denominated, with a view to having some big fish unopposed. We went into the election period. You saw the violence and discrimination as against our candidate, particularly the heavy involvement of the military in the election exercise. We maneuvered to get some people elected. Come election day, we witnessed several of our candidates having all results in their hands, but negotiating to be declared as winner. Some managed to be declared, many were not declared.
So negotiated victories?
Yes.
Oh. Wow.
Where you had to call lawyers and everyone in the tally centers. And a few things returning officers would say, now this is too much. You know, even now I'm from overnight election petition preparations. An election petition is an inquiry of sorts. You get a lot of information But as a practitioner who has been at this for more than 15 years, the kind of petitions, grievances that we have on our desks now, looking back, says it all. You have even those who managed to be declared. After being declared, the same Electoral Commission that declared them winners has certified results where they are not winners. Having declared them as winners, they are now certifying declaration of results forms for those they declared as losers, as winners. Leave alone having declared people in the third position, because that is another set of petitions that we have. So most of the petitions, our prayers are going to be that the one probably who was declared winner did not win. And now we are going to see even those who did not win seeking for the same prayer of having won an election which they did not win.
On the other hand, of recent we've seen a number of political prisoners being released. Is this a win that NUP celebrates?
Meanwhile, as we were struggling with the electoral malpractices, violence, and illegalities by even the Electoral Commission, then we had thousands of our supporters being arrested. We have a record of over 3,000 supporters and leaders having been taken to prison. Information is not coming out that even some actually died in detention, especially towards the election date. This is all being...
That's a big statement.
It is. It is true. In prison. People have died in prison. I'll say it on TV. Out of this suffocation. Simon, we found our people in prisons, cells, which were supposed to hold 20, holding 200 people. In Luzira here, remand. People beyond 40 years could hardly survive being piled up in a cell. So there was a lot of gross mismanagement of this election, more than ever before. And to conclude, having heard the diplomats saying that we have a good international image, I think you can't put a straight face in so stating, especially that just most recently, when you were called to the EU as government, you could not manage to put a straight face to defend a bit of codified transgressions in
Ambassador Donia, aren't you merely doing face saving when you say all is well apparently against all that is being talked about by the panelists here? And besides, it's only normal that every after election you pick up the pieces. How come there is no effort by the government to try to fix what went wrong as you move on?
Thank you, Simon. As my people from Isinjiro would say, what would they say? I expected, with due respect, my fellow panelists to really, given the fact that they are from the opposition, to say what they are saying. That's normal. And I think these elections, there is no election that is worldwide that is perfect. We live in an imperfect world. And I think politically we have litigated the outcome of these elections immediately after the elections. And I'm glad that the council here talks about going to court, legal recourse. It is within our law. You know, you are not satisfied with the outcome, you go to court. Simon, we are in a very turbulent region of the Great Lakes region. you know, compared to our neighbors, and I'm not going to name countries, post-election situations, Uganda is really passed with flying colors. Honorable Semujju can say, okay, there is, in every society, I mean, where you live in America, you know, a certain group of people have been, you know, oppressed or not happy for some time. It's normal. But we are not, you know, lights are switched on. There are no bodies on the streets. There are no rioting. And that is a really...
One of the contenders is out of the country.
Yeah, that's...
Because he was hounded out of the country.
No,
that's a critical issue, isn't it?
No, he was not hounded out of the country. He, with his own admission, he found his way out of the country. He was not hounded by some... He found his way out of the country. You know, that can be a topic of the
At his
program.
volition or because of the situation?
At his volition. You know, he talks about, you know, he felt uncomfortable. And the government has said he's free to come back. But on his own volition, he left the country. He left his home and left the country. He was not deported from his country. So I think I want to pick, if you allow me, my elder, Honorable Savit, where he picked about national dialogue. I think over the last 20 years, dialogue has become a dirty word, kind of. It is synonymous, you know, if the opposition talks to government, they have been bought. Nobody wants, even when they are dialoguing or when they are talking, nobody wants to. I mean, it's our country. We need to normalize the word dialogue. And dialogue can be different phases. Okay, you have the post-election environment where there is tension. You know, people can talk and see how to come, and he's in the courts, he's in the police. Politicians can talk. Then you have what Honorable Sabit referred to that has been talked about, the national dialogue. And
But in the interim, are you aware of talks that are being spearheaded by the Interreligious Council?
I have heard them talk about dialogue immediately after the elections, and they have explained it very well, that they are dealing with the post-election situation, but they will also deal with the national dialogue, which is mid-term and long-term, to talk about structural issues in the country. And I think that's normal and important. But my point is that we need to normalize dialogue. Dialogue needs to be normal, part of our political fabric. You know, we should avoid the situation whereby I'm talking to my brother. I can't talk to my brother, counsel, because I'm from the government. And I cannot be seen with him because he's from the opposition. I think once we go beyond that, we will start having a better country. And I'm seeing in the media about as if dialogue is a problem, as if talks are secret, as if people talking about breaking an impasse or addressing issues where they can really make sure things are running normally should be encouraged. That's my point.
Very interesting.
Dialogue became a problem because of what has happened.
Yes.
I have kept telling this story. I go to State House with a panel to record a radio program. As I am exiting, that time Miguel was the Minister for Lands. He hugs me and thank you, my brother, for seeing the light.
You are still a journalist or you had joined politics?
I had joined politics 2014. I was an MP.
And you are doing a radio program?
We were on a panel and the president said, you come and we record it from here. I had actually refused to go. But eventually I said, okay, I can go to State House and have it. So a minister hugs me to say, my younger brother, thank you very much for seeing the light. And that has become the conduct of Mr. Museveni and the State House. The moment people see you there. So if you want dialogue to regain its traditional meaning, you need to begin with that.
Honorable Semujju.
I saw MPs in Tanzania, when they had problems with Chikwete, opposition MPs walked to State House and said, please, you are not, there was no problem. In Kenya, they do it.
Honorable Semujju,
But the moment you turn State House into a deal-making platform.
You've had hints of talks
Yes.
to guarantee the freedom of Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi, to discuss the fate of political prisoners. Is this something in the right direction? And do you find it plausible that...
I've told you where the problem is, and that problem needs to be solved. Because I think Museveni has psyched the country to believe that each time you go to Museveni, you've gone to look for handouts. And I think that's what he offers in plenty. That when you come, he will even be surprised that if you go to see him. One time I was a journalist covering a committee of parliament, Committee on Presidential Affairs, that time chaired by Margaret Zua. So they go to State House to interview the president. They are processing some motions of parliament. And throughout the meeting, they were on personal issues. There is an MP to Wita from Nakasongola. Your Excellency, can you be a guest of honor at my wedding? Your Excellency, my father left the school. So that's what happens in the State House. That's how you need to recover the integrity, the image of public institutions, starting with the presidency. That when people come to see you, they have come to see you for an issue, not for handout. So the reason everybody who will be seen with Museveni, the point you made here, that if they see you with Muizi, they will think that either he's compromising you or you're compromising him. That has been deliberately created. And we need to deal with that for the dialogue to happen. But otherwise, if you start with the dialogue, whoever goes to the dialogue is going to be, he will have a problem either with his institution, if it's a political party, or with the society. Because that's what the president has built over a period of time, that when you go to him, you've gone to do a deal like Trump does. It's deal making. So dialoguing, as the Honorable Jack Sabit said, it has been a demand of all the key actors. In the past, the word used to be national conference. You remember that?
Now it's being influenced by the religious leaders. Do you think they will make any breakthrough?
I am not sure that they will succeed, because after 2016, we had a similar situation. And I know Adonia was involved at one stage.
Deeply?
I don't want to
no, his name was widely known.
But I know
now
it was...
years have passed by, you can divert.
The religious leaders, the elders, the situation room, some of them genuinely felt that we needed a discussion as a country, and therefore went to persuade both Mr. Museveni and Dr. Besigye and their teams. And I was on a committee. I even was called by Uganda because I didn't believe in these discussions. I think someone must have told him. So he called me, and I went to his office. And he said, my younger brother, I've been told this, what is the problem? So, because the aim of Museveni is to create calmness. And you see, Adonia, we need to calm down. That's the agenda.
To do what?
Calmness. You want to create calmness.
Artificial or real?
Even if you are at pain, they will want you to behave like you are okay. At that time, the parties involved in pushing for a dialogue genuinely wanted a dialogue. But Museveni wanted calmness in the country to recover the economy, which had been disturbed by the election and the amount of money had taken out. As soon as he gained that stability, then he ran away from the dialogue. We had reached far, he had even signed the documents.
I'll talk about that. That's not entirely true.
He took off. So even this time, people want to dialogue with Museveni. It is because of what I told you at the beginning of this program that the tension remains. He sees it. That's why he has deployed the anti-riot and military and police. They are still occupying strategic locations in Kampala. I think he's not sure of the response of the people. Because you see, people can keep quiet. In Tanzania, they did. And Suluhu went through an election smoothly. I was in Dar es Salaam. She had covered the whole of Dar es Salaam with her pictures. She didn't even allow candidates from her party to put posters. They were only posters of Samia Suluhu. And on election day, the country went up in flame. They had to shoot people. Museveni, being a soldier with his experience, I think he understands that when you offend people by the things that happened in election and after, you're on tenterhooks. You don't know what their response will be. So his solution now is to deploy the military just in case. So he's interested in calmness 100%. Is he interested in dialogue? No. Do we need a dialogue? Yes, you need a dialogue on a set of issues. I remember 2016, I am one of those who proposed that actually we don't need a meeting with Museveni. Let us put down all our grievances and grievances of others in a document, and then he will respond, we will respond. We can agree, we don't have to go and meet anywhere. The moment you have agreed on issues, then you can sign them. That was the agreement. But for him, he was pushing for a meeting. Adonia, you're not the only one who was involved. There are also others. In fact, at one time, he was saying, you see, for this dialogue to start, why don't I meet Besigye first? When I meet Besigye, then the dialogue can start. And he said, no, you deal with the document. The issues are here. They are not personal.
Well, Adonia will definitely make a response later. But Honorable Sabiti, isn't it anything to celebrate that after weeks of a siege at Bobi Wine's house, the soldiers are gone, and we are increasingly getting to see leaders and members of the National Unity Platform who were arrested and incarcerated getting released, and these key wins that point to beautiful things ahead?
See,
or how much do we interrogate about them?
You see, let's not simplify the situation. What happened affected different people, parties, families, so we need a well-structured dialogue, not a dialogue of calling 10 people, 3 people. Must have a national dialogue.
Yeah, but something should tell you that behind the scenes there is some influence to get key wins or at least key picks.
You see, the way this country has been led, let's be frank to each other. Nearly in every election in this country, we have had problems in terms of not accepting the elections, the use of guns, the manipulation of elections by electoral commission, the unnecessary arrest of citizens. You see, these are things which a country must sit down and discuss. You may have a country and have a strong army and it looks peaceful, but internally, people are not happy. You can't just look at this election, which we have just finished, and say, yes, we won, we have many members of parliament. That's not enough. Some people think there was a lot of cheating. Some of us believe, actually we believe, there was a lot of manipulation, manipulating systems, using force, the military force, using electoral commission. So all these are serious issues. If they are not handled.
Okay, do you applaud the departure of the military, the garrison that was at Kyagulanyi's residence?
But they are gone. Other than that spot, his house, they are everywhere. Yes, it's as if we are at war. Yes, go around town, go everywhere. Are we at war?
Okay. Does the departure of the military from Kyagulanyi's residence signal anything?
Maybe they were looking for evidence of whatever, which I don't know.
But at what time did they depart?
They left
I saw it on TV.
on Tuesday.
They were showing it on TV and whatever, but
Initially,
I don't know whether all of them have even left.
They were not sure that Kyagulanyi had fled the country. I think now they are happy, having established that he's in America. So if they went there for Kyagulanyi and he's not there, then they will leave. I don't think the purpose was the house. But they were not sure. Is he in the country? Has he left? Now when he said, the guys, I am here, I mean, they had to leave.
Do you treat it ordinarily, or these could be efforts?
But if you have been around, every election this has happened. There was time they camped at Westjay's place. They didn't have a toilet for nearly 3 months. They were just using his farm, spreading diseases for 3 months. But when Museveni is sure that now the population has moved on, progressively, even the ones at the roundabouts, he will withdraw them. The moment he establishes that the population has moved on. And that's why diplomats who are doing diplomatic work in Uganda, like Adonia, they will all be here to say, you guys will come down, this is our country, I should speak to Semujju and have a cup of tea. They are all withdrawn from their stations to come down the situation. So there is less diplomacy to do in America. There is now diplomacy to do here. Once it is done, Adonia will be back in New York and the others will go.
But I thought now that Kyagulanyi is globe-trotting,
there is nothing.
Adonia has a lot on his platter now.
No,
to go and clean up after him.
No, the problem is not Kyagulanyi. I don't think Kyagulanyi lives at all the roundabouts in Kampala. He doesn't live there. The problem remains the population. This population that you saw exploding in Tanzania, you will never know when it does and where it will begin.
Kansumu, while on the face of it, officials at the National Unity Platform have denied any kind of negotiations with President Museveni for a safe return of the principal, there are signals all over the place. The release of political prisoners, the freeing of his house, plus, of course, a lot that is coming. Isn't this something worth celebrating?
Did they have to be there in the first place?
Well, they were there.
Were those who are imprisoned supposed to be imprisoned in the first place? Were there any charges that can be sustained against thousands of our supporters? Do we need to dialogue or discuss about this? Should the dialogue be about rights? Should we negotiate whether we
Isn't the issue of political prisoners critical and
it
deserving a discussion?
The only fact that I can state is that for certain we knew, because judicial officers were very clear on this, we shall not give you bail until after 15th. We all knew, all lawyers who are in these courts will tell you. So they were arrested, detained politically for a purpose. So I'm not surprised that some of them are being released.
I thought these gestures are remarkable.
Prisons are being decongested. I told you I would still state for the thousands that were thrown into prisons. It became overwhelming, even for prisons. Prisoners started dying. Even sustaining the crowds that were in prisons were not sustainable. The courts were so busy. We were leaving courts in the night. They would bring hundreds at Mengo. They bring hundreds in Wakiso, hundreds in Nakawa, with a view to overwhelming us. Indeed, we're a little bit overwhelmed as lawyers of NUP. And it is a fact that over time, progressively, they are being released. But should they have been taken there in the first place?
Well, Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi tweeted, and if I could share the tweet for the benefit of our viewers, how can my rights and dignity be a subject of negotiation? He accused NBS of being a peddler of fake results and fake narratives. My return to my home country is a right, and I will soon return to Uganda, and the regime can do whatever they want. Standing against Museveni and beating him, in brackets, is only a crime in the eyes of NBS. not in the eyes of the law.
Precisely. That's what I'm saying. We are not going to negotiate rights. We are going to fight for our rights. That's the position of the National Unity Platform.
Is the fate of Kyagulanyi such a big issue? His return or stay in exile?
It's not a big issue, but he's a leader. If we can agree on that. You know, he's contested in elections.
Maybe what we lose.
He contested in the elections, and his continued absence maybe should, you know, concern his party. But really, this is what I talked about, the kind of intolerance. Even the being allergic to the word, call it negotiation, call it discussion. I mean, the fact is that there were security services at his home, and the security services know their reasons. They have their reasons, either preventive or real. They have their reasons. But the fact that, I think you posed a good question, the fact that they withdraw from the home should be lauded as a confidence-building measure. Because the dialogue Honorable Sabit and Honorable Semujju is talking about, you have to create conditions for it by building confidence.
Should we thank government for withdrawing troops from Besige's movement?
No, we don't, no thanks. But I'm talking about...
You say it's laudable.
It is laudable in the sense that conditions, confidence-building measures are being created in the country to really, you know, promote dialogue and create... Calmness is not bad, Honorable Semujju, as opposed to chaos. I think whatever is going on, I think that builds confidence. Because if somebody runs away from the country, whether waiting, they have not used official borders, they have gone. That's not normal. Their return, even their return has to be not negotiated, but arranged. And I think it does not cost anybody for people in the government to talk to people.
Would you be keen to arrange the return of Kyagulanyi?
I mean, if he asks for my services, why not? If he asks for my services, but if he doesn't need my services, he's a free citizen to return. But he's a leader. You know, you can't just escape from the country and you turn up that here I am. I think that's another issue that will be dealt with. But the fact that the soldiers, you know, left his residence should be laudable. The government is trying to create conditions, you know, send a message that we, you know, even where there is disagreement, I'm sure those security services had their reasons. You might not appreciate them, but they had their reasons. The fact that they have withdrawn in an orderly fashion, and by the way, I saw a clip from the news, it seems to be an organized handover, kind of. So I think we should laud that. But really what we need to focus on is creating conditions for a national dialogue. And I think the Interreligious Council has that mandate, and they are working on it, and I think they will succeed.
Okay, what is your role in this?
Nothing.
As we take a break, you had a question for
Simon, should we forget the abusive nature of the meter at his home? Living is another thing. You cannot say we may just forget because you want to sanitize, legitimize the election period. We are talking dialogue partly because it is a means of trying to legitimize, put the country at rest. But who can forget what happened to Kyagulanyi's wife? Who can forget what happened to his, just inside his house, which was put upside down? These are the real issues. The organized crime against the National Unity Platform. We are talking about Kyagulanyi, but you have all vast deputy presidents having been detained. You have leaders at the top having been detained without any crime. Why don't we discuss this first? Do you think you can start with dialogue?
But they have been released on bail.
Yes, but...
They are in courts of law. They are at least...
But what explains
has become fashion.
The fashions.
So are they
now-
released because you're magnanimous?
No,
Is it the magnanimity of the
but,
state?
But no, it's not magnanimous. The fact that they are taken to courts and charges have been preferred, that's now a court process. It's the rule of law.
No.
They
The
have
challenge
had
is
their
that courts
day
are
in
being
court.
used. Look here,
That's extreme, but you're
that
entitled
courts
to your
are
opinion.
being used by the
Whenever
state.
elections are held, the main opposition person is always in trouble, right? You remember what happened to Kizza Besigye? Now it has happened to Kyagulanyi. Is there something that government can come out and explain? Why? Why arrest the person who has been, opposing you?
And institutional abuse.
The big question remains, how best can the country navigate out of the current political deadlock emerging from post-election? We'll be back. Welcome back as we take a deep dive into the state of affairs. Well, my panelists agree that there is a semblance of a deadlock in the country, but how best can it be navigated is the big question. I'll start with you, Honorable Semujju.
See, I was a journalist when Mengo was in a dialogue with Museveni.
Pedro.
The outcome was supposed to have been a regional tier. Even the content had been discussed. And eventually, when that didn't materialize, you remember around 2009, the current Katikkiro of Uganda, together with the other ministers, getting arrested. Now the discussion shifted from the issues that formed the serious dialogue to the freedom of Katikkiro Mayiga and his team. And their release and abandoning of charges eventually became a point for celebration. I see the Adonias taking us to the same path. Because the dialogue that people have been demanding in Uganda, including a national conference, had nothing to do with the political prisoners, had nothing to do with the military raiding Kyagulanyi's home. It had everything to do with the peaceful transfer of power. These Jack Sabiti, some of you don't know Jack Sabiti. Jack Sabiti was in Libya training with Museveni going to remove Obote. He's a soldier you were talking. You know him as an FDC leader. But the point of departure, the point at which he left NRM, had nothing to do with political prisoners. But something people have been craving for a very long time, peaceful transfer of power. At that time, at least when these Sabitis were still there, Museveni's contemporary, we were being run by a group. That group has now been decimated. You are now run by Museveni and his family, Sare and Mhozi and others. Maybe we'll need to go back. So the national dialogue, and remember, I was a journalist when Museveni approached the late Semujju and the Semujju at that time Besigye had gone to South Africa. What the reform agenda told Museveni is that, thank you very much. I think Njuba went and met Museveni. But they said, we now need a dialogue that will involve everybody and the issues discussed and agreed before, and then you can come and discuss those issues. If you approach National Unity Platform today, and your dialogue is on return of Kyagulanyi, of you not going back to his house, and if you those ones
Releasing political prisoners.
those ones Museveni will grant those ones even before sunset. And
So
he
what-
will bring cameras to
That's
say
not the
that we are
dialogue.
now good people, we have left Kyagulanyi's home, now some political prisoners
Don't
have
simplify.
been freed. So we need to go back to the issues issues that are creating uncertainty in the country. You can't grow a country under these conditions.
Yeah, but
There is absolutely
how would you get into a dialogue when your colleagues are incarcerated in prison?
You can do this concurrently.
I thought it's one of the conditions to facilitate.
You see,
Confidence building,
It's
like
called confidence building.
Yes.
I have told you with Mengo, the discussion was on the form of governance. And they spent quite a lot of time. They were meeting in the State House in Nakasero, thinking that Museveni was genuine about everything. Eventually, he begins to arrest people, and the dialogue shifts from the form of governance now to political prisoners. And when they are released, people are celebrating and they say, I am a good man, I have released your people. And that is the trap that these diplomats who are doing diplomatic work domestically are taking us into. That build the confidence. Now they are released. Now there is confidence in the country. What Uganda must be discussing now, Museveni, 41 years in power. You have his son insulting everybody from neighbors to leaders here. His brother beat discipline, but he has built a kingdom in Acholi. You want something in Kampala, you must first drive to Acholi for clearance. Yeah, we are like prisoners, Adonia, in our country. You want appointment, you must drive to Guru. The road is very bad, 4 hours. And then you go there and you kneel, and then they say, now Semujju, you have cleared you. That's what happened in these elections. That you have declaration forms in your hand. But either you call Sare or you call another person, then they say, Semujju is not very bad, that one you can announce. So the dialogue that people wanted, the country hadn't even reached this level. I don't even know where to begin from. Because at that time you had one issue that Museveni was using the military and money and everything to stay in power. Now there is full capture of the state. You go to the judiciary, but the other day he was swearing a Chief Justice at his home. Can you imagine a Chief Justice now? As if he was asking for a job at his farm. So national issues have become private. Privatization of the state, militarization. So the dialogue should concentrate on those issues. I told the people who came to meet us at Kasanga that we don't need the meeting between Museveni and Besigye. Let's flesh out these issues. Museveni responds to them. The moment he has agreed on those, we may not even be the immediate and direct beneficiary, but the country will benefit. Yes. And I told them, for us, if we are bad people, go and discuss these issues with the religious leaders, with the traditional leaders, agree and publicize them that as Uganda, the following now will happen.
Thank you. Honorable Sabiti, do you find it awkward that you are a key stakeholder in national affairs? You are not anywhere involved in even any effort towards dialogue, and you can only discuss it live on TV. So your exclusion raises eyebrows, doesn't it?
Not really. I don't see how you bring me as an individual.
No, you are an embodiment of several other distinguished personalities.
Yeah, we demand, some of us have always demanded for dialogue, well-structured dialogue. To dialogue on this constitution we have, dialogue about how parties should work in this country, dialogue on many issues.
You've had an encounter with President Museveni. Do you think he's forthright on speaking about
I think it's many years ago since I met Museveni. Many years ago. I've had no encounter with Museveni. And I'm saying it in good faith, right?
Okay. When you met him then, was he well-meaning?
The last time I discussed issues on Uganda was on the type of governance in Uganda. And I was insisting on term limit, and number 2, to have 2 chambers. And those are the 2 issues I discussed with him. And those are many years ago, and have not met him since then.
Counsel, when you listen to analysts here, you get a sense that things have fallen apart to the extent that you can't find where to start from. as the National Unity Platform yourselves, what kind of discussion would be ideal for you internally to forge a way forward?
No, of course, you can't speak about dialogue without speaking to process and structure. That's where it starts. The problem we have is a problem of trust. Like you put it to senior elder here. The issue of trust. Someone will ask you, what is the record of President Museveni? With dialogue. That's where it starts. Especially that when we are discussing dialogue, we are discussing about Museveni, dialoguing with Museveni, the man. That is how bad it looks. I've been there in the past. The Democratic Party, I was the National League advisor of the Democratic Party. When this discussion of dialogue came in, we were part of iPod. We had an iPod which was hijacked by the ruling party. A dialogue where if President Museveni is to appear, he's like a high priest celebrating mass. We all have to say, Gonsinze, Gonsinze, Gonsingidedala. Just prostrating before him, our leaders. And that is how that idea and structure, which had actually been organized and facilitated by people from the outside. I'll tell you, if you went at the regional level, they'll tell you the problem actually of the region, not only Uganda, here, is the leadership in Uganda. If you went to Kenya, the kind of discussions we are having now with politicians in Kenya, in Tanzania, even in the last election, they were telling the problem of Uganda is not only a problem of Uganda, it's becoming a regional problem. And that is the discussion that we have now. So dialogue here, even people around us, nations around us, think there should be dialogue.
Before
Before
you seek to speak to your political rivals, in this case President Museveni, is NUP in itself, in shape, to interact with other colleagues from different parties, to have a common front?
I'll remind you, probably you are aware, one of the last attempts to dialogue that actually political parties across board were kind of impressing was because they were led by a person they trusted. The late Dr. Paul Kaanga Semujju had started a dialogue of sorts across board. And we had termed him, I think Dr. Kizza Besigye termed him the remaining glue. We are missing such persons in this country that we can respect and trust across board. I'm telling you, we are aware in the National Unity Platform that this talk of dialogue to us is empty talk aimed at legitimizing. We do not believe that in their hearts of hearts, they believe there should be that discussion now. They believe they have the numbers and still pushing for numbers through court. The discussion should be institutional. Institutional collapse. We are telling you how dirty the Electoral Commission is, how partisan the police is. The army, we all know, is for the commander-in-chief. You know, we are telling you how RDCs are manning elections. These are institutional challenges.
Yeah, but your
that the dialogue.
Council Muyizi, your principle is quite ambivalent towards anything to do with talks. What is this alternative?
The alternative is a discussion across board on the Uganda we want.
I thought that's done.
The issue is process and structure. We do not have that structure and process and trust.
Okay, there is always a starting point.
The last that he had.
But if from the onset you say, I am against this.
The Honorable Kyagulanyi was behind what we called the unity in diversity. All these leaders know. The FDC was on table. The DP was on table. The NRM through Ndugu Ruhakana Rugunda was on table. We had a convener that everyone believed. The first signature was from the National Unity Platform. Just as young as it was, there is the goodwill, but what is the structure and process? Do we believe? And how do we go to dialogue with a person we believe has no history of dialogue? And as you stated, our hands are tied. Our leaders are incarcerated. Do you want us to discuss on whether the National Unity Platform should organize or not. For starters, there are basics that can show goodwill. Do you believe in political parties being free to operate? How do you then want to sit in dialogue with political parties when you do not believe in political parties operating? So there are certain principles to start with. The goodwill should not be in the talk. We should see President Museveni and the NRM. Let's go back on a few things.
Ambassador Dunia, looks like the foundation for any meaningful dialogue in Uganda is quite shaky and cast in doubt. Doesn't it, for starters, render any attempt or any effort futile?
No. I mean, there are foundations, and he talked about what was being done to promote the national dialogue. Honorable Semujju talked about 2016, where I was involved a bit. I think we can learn lessons from those and build on them. I mean, we are going to have dialogue, and it's not leadership to say, because I don't trust my opponent or they are tricksters, we're not going to dialogue.
How did you get involved in the first place? In the 2016?
2016, after the elections, there was an idea that FDC then was the leading opposition, and NRM. There was, because they are always, you have to begin somewhere, that there would be some dialogue on key issues that will lead to a national dialogue. But, you know, these were two major political parties in parliament. You know, there was also post-election kind of tension, and we started off very well, and Honorable Semujju knows it. There were a series of mediators that were proposed.
What was the big issue then?
There were the issues of the reform of the Electoral Commission, the economy.
No, I think that wasn't the fundamental issue.
Yeah,
the fundamental issue was a stolen election, a disputed election.
No, there was the issue of whether to audit or what. There were different interpretations. There were different interpretations. How do you audit an election that is over? How do you, maybe people are talking about the systems. How do we look at the systems? Not the particular election, because so things were on the table. And Honorable Semujju's side kind of, you know, betrayed the process and chickened out. I left you to talk. We even got a mediator from Sweden, a former Minister of Development, that was trusted by both President Museveni and Dr. Kizza Besigye. She came here for weeks, came up with a document, and both leaders were supposed to sign it in public.
Who chickened out? Then,
on the last minute, Dr. Kizza Besigye said, no, we can actually sign it. We don't need to meet. And I think Semujju advised him. But the mediator, you see, with these processes have owner. So once you trust somebody with mediation, they are in charge of the process. You as a party, she wanted that meeting. And she's still alive. She wanted that meeting, and she was disappointed because the idea was that we can build on these two main political parties with kind of basic agreement, and then we have a national dialogue.
Honorable Ambassador, you deny that you're not central in the behind-the-scenes talks.
I was central in the past.
No, but now,
No. Now I'm just an inquisitive citizen, like all of us. Very inquisitive.
Yeah, but have you heard from your fly on the wall about what's happening? About especially that issues that have been fronted include release of prisoners, a return of Bobby, peaceful return, and also iPod. The issue of getting Noop into iPod.
No, I've seen them in the papers. These days, I'm not as good running sources like I used to be when I was a journalist. I just read newspapers and listen. But on the surface, those will not be bad. On the surface, will not be bad starting points. So you have to start from somewhere. We will have to grow. You know, trust does not fall from heaven. It's built. You know, and you start from, look at the history of negotiations. I participated in the Burundi negotiations for 11 years, where you had political parties where the president of the party and the wife was the treasurer, and the driver was the secretary general. Those were the political parties we dealt with. Mandela got tired of them. Nyerere died. Mandela got tired of them. Jacob Zuma saw an agreement and ended the war. But trust was built, and these were ethnic kind of conflicts. I think we stand a chance by talking, not being dismissive. Oh, Museveni has no history of trust.
Yeah, but you've already had the skepticism of the principle.
Yeah, but that is lack of. I think we need to. These are our leaders. These are leaders seated here. You need to get. Look at Kenya, which you're talking about. Look at the late Raila Odinga. Having lost many elections, but after every election, he would reach out to the other side. Not that he trusted them, but the country reached a stage where he was the statesman. So we need to kind of have statesmen on the side of the opposition that will say, look here, we don't trust this person, but we can reach out and have this. And I think we should give the chance to the Interreligious Council. I think we need to talk to them. Everybody believes in these people. And they have a plan that is really credible. And if they can really begin somewhere and bring all the parties together, and look at iPod. iPod, you know it better than me. It's work in progress, but at least parties meet there. And I think your party had got out. Now it can come back. I was reading somewhere. So if there is iPod where all the political parties, leaders meet, that's also progress.
Thank you. The issue of getting National Inter-Platform admitted into iPod remains another very sticky subject. How best can it be managed?
You see, at the beginning of the iPod, people thought that what happened in Ghana you can import. Because I think that's where the Situation Room and others played a part, culminating into the writing of a new constitution with 2 terms of 4 years each. J. Rawling standing for 2 terms, and he doesn't change the constitution, and he brings his vice president, is defeated. And since then, Ghana has been changing leaders and has remained stable. Because once the country doesn't change leaders, even attracting investment is going to be very difficult because of the uncertainty. You will have only a few fortune hunters. I used to have a discussion with some government ministers, and I said, you see, if someone has $100 million hard earned, he will want to invest it in a stable country where leaders change, but stability remains. So Ghana, having gone through the J. Rawlings turmoil and was able to overcome it, it was as a result of those visits to Ghana by FDC and other parties that led to the birth of iPod here. The initial discussion in iPod, and everybody was attending. In fact, it was NRM that was not attending iPod. I think in the 9th Parliament, the parties in iPod even came up with the proposed legal reforms. They brought bills in Parliament that were received by late Jacob Oulanyah as the Deputy Speaker. Later on, Mba was dismissed the iPod as an NGO. And iPod, I think, at that point started collapsing. When we were in FDC, we were in and out many times because iPod had lost purpose. Museveni seeks to resurrect iPod.
Today it is a statutory.
Because of the calls for dialogue. He said, but there is dialogue in the National Forum, this one of the Electoral Commission under the Political Parties and Organizations Act. There is also iPod. These people from outside, you religious leaders, there is mechanism for dialogue. You stop calling for a dialogue, we will dialogue through these entities. And then he said, at one time he says, okay, if you don't agree with me now, you will not, because all the discussions in iPod moved now from the issues to money. Increase money, and he said, how much are we getting? We can increase the money quickly from initially 10 billion to 35. Said you can even include even the areas can come. Then they take photos and leave. Said, but you, National Unity Platform, you are bad-mannered. These ones don't give them money. Then you quickly run to Parliament and change the law. Now, it's okay. If you want to be admitted, first you must accept that when Museveni comes to call, you will attend, and then you will salute him. Then you are a member of iPod. These are now the new conditions.
They are in the law.
They are not in the law. What is in the law is that you must be attending.
Yes, you must be attending.
That is in the law.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But in practice, because I remember National Unity Platform wrote that, okay, now we are ready to come. They said, you wait, don't come. Even after them writing, they said, don't come. So where we are...
Is it a trap now?
No, because you see, the whole discussion in the country had shifted from the objective for which iPod was formed to now earning some money to grow parties through iPod. I suspect even Muiz, they didn't want to go there, but they wanted to pick the money because the money is public to continue growing their party. And I don't blame them because this was taxpayers' money whose purpose was to build the parties. But Museveni was holding on to it. He said, okay, for you to receive it, you must come to my meetings. The point that Adonia was making here, when the Swedish minister came here, she went back to what Museveni was demanding. That you come, you Museveni and Besigye, you come, we take photos and you sign. And we said, no. We can sign, we don't need to have a physical meeting. You send the document, we sign, and Museveni signs, and we announce you have agreed on the following. In fact, in Ghana and partly in Kenya, they even enacted laws to guarantee the outcome of those discussions. I think in Ghana they started with the law, that what we are going through now is guaranteed by the law passed by Parliament, that it will be implemented. We proposed all those, but I'm saying, no, we can meet with Besigye. The issue was meeting with Besigye. No. Take photos, and his dialogue has ended. And we said, no, we are not going to have this dialogue of photos with Museveni. It must be your dialogue. So the question he asks, the direct answer is that iPod now is a tool for controlling political parties.
Not growing.
It is now a tool for control. If Museveni invests you and you refuse, then he says, don't give them this money of iPod. If they want the money, they will come back. So when you come back and there are photos, I think he will have achieved his dialogue.
Well,
because I kept asking those who are going there. We boycotted the meetings when we were in FDC in Munyonyo. And they were insulting us. I said, okay, you tell us, outline 1, 2, 3 things that you have agreed, for which you will say, you guys, you have missed. Now tell me, since Museveni came in and there are photos and there were, just tell me 3 things that they have agreed that are of importance to the country.
Thank you. Honorable Sabiti, how much do you trust the role and the enthusiasm of religious leaders and the iPod to steer the country into national dialogue?
Well, those are institutions which are generally acceptable.
We can only settle for that.
But before we agree on those, we should first look at other. There could be others who could be added. But at the moment, Interreligious Council is generally accepted.
Has the country become too desperate that you can settle for anything?
But these are our leaders, they are not anything. Kaggwa, these are our religious leaders.
I agree, but I thought issues to do with resolving political stalemates would rather be resolved first and foremost by the politicians themselves.
But there is a trust deficit, like Council was saying. So that religious leaders can fill that gap and bring them together.
Okay, then, what would be done to resolve the trust deficit?
Even the religious leaders, when they went to meet Museveni, they have now changed. The Catholics and Protestants have different leaders. You are shouting over, dialogue. For you, Mubaji, when Muslims were quarreling with you over property, do you have a dialogue? Started dismissing one after another.
And
Where
eventually,
do you get those stories? Where do you get these stories?
Let's take a very short break and we'll be back. Yes, it's still the Frontline as we analyze the current state of affairs, asking whether dialogue can resolve the apparent deadlock in the aftermath of the January elections. But, well, Council Muizi, President Museveni is just a few weeks away to swearing in. Come May, he'll be sworn in for another term. Between now and then, is NUP having any strategy to show they're still relevant and they're still a force to reckon with?
We are the leading, we are a leading political party in Uganda. That in itself makes us relevant and hard to ignore, especially that we command the majority in Uganda, the majority being young people, and the most aggrieved, the most volatile, and the future, if you are to discuss about the Uganda we want.
Yeah, but look,
so it will
you're in such a situation where you've not even sat down to audit the outcome of the election.
Auditing is a process, Njala. It is a process. It's not a one-off. I told you for certain that on my desk I have 20 election petitions. You will not find any evidence in 1-2 days in auditing an election process. This is part of the larger. I told you the reports that we have pre-nomination, nomination, election period, and post-election. That is part of the audit. You cannot get an answer or response on this from the NRM. Thus, the current talk for dialogue. That's why we are saying dialogue you cannot speak to dialogue without having to answer to a few of these challenges.
Can you speak of dialogue when you are in disarray internally? The principle is away.
We can speak of dialogue when the state stops abducting our people. We can speak about dialogue when the ruling party recognizes that the National Unity Platform is a registered political party that can do activities within the law. We can speak to dialogue when the NRM is not using institutions like courts to get electoral victories even where they did not. We can speak to dialogue when our people are not being picked and taken to torture chambers or safe houses, just like John Mary was. It is on record. John Mary Sebufu, among others. We still have political prisoners of the last election, 2021. And our challenge is not about actually speaking to Museveni alone. Our challenge is the institutions that are being used by President Museveni and his government. We have a problem with the judiciary, which has been captured. A judiciary which has what we call cadre judges. We have parliament. I don't know what is left of parliament. So the issue of dialogue should be about institutions. Can we have better governance? Yeah, it's a governance issue. So if I'm to dialogue with Museveni, for example...
If someone is making an overture to you and you react with hubris and say, I cannot.
We are not saying we cannot. No one can say dialogue is bad. For stability, where we are, for there to be stability in Uganda, you cannot underscore the importance of dialogue. But the process and structure has to be discussed. Where do you start? You're talking of religious leaders. It's not true that the Inter-Religious Council is respected by politicians across board.
There's no respect.
I've told you the last attempt, you recall, you're a journalist, was when elders were picked by the late Dr. Paul Kanga Semujju. A similar structure. There were religious leaders in this team, in the unity and diversity process, political parties across board, and they had signed to a memorandum. So there is a little bit of respect left with some leaders, like the Jacks. Where are they in this? So we need a national dialogue that does not stop at us politicians.
Yeah,
we are speaking about a dialogue.
Why aren't you enlisting their counsel and support?
No, it was frustrated. I'll tell you, the NRM pulled out. He said there's a problem if they see me associating with him. But there came a problem even when the NRM saw those that were associating with us in that process and where it was leading.
The question that many of us don't want to answer, I see Muizi falling in the same trap. The tendency by an average, ordinary opposition MP is also to cover up our own weaknesses and then use the excesses of the state. After this election that is stolen, the military that is going to continue harassing you, we must also find a solution. And for me, the solution begins, even before you think of Museveni, there must be a discussion amongst ourselves. We have also not been honest to each other before you speak about Museveni. We will need to have a national meeting of all. I saw people in South Sudan when they were fighting Bashir. They were also fighting each other. We had meetings here in Uganda and in Entebbe. I used to cover them as a journalist. Not meeting about Bashir, but meetings to bring these forces together. And you can see as soon as Bashir falls, they are fighting. They went back and picked their old
but actually, Honorable,
so for me,
on that very note,
yes.
Towards, okay, at the onset of the recent elections, there were efforts for you to talk to each other. I think you even signed a memorandum.
We signed a memorandum with the ANT. The two of us reached out to know. It didn't materialize.
Why?
We will need to revisit that process.
Why?
Why? Because when you're speaking to colleagues, you don't want to come on TV and then say the why on TV. There are reasons, we know them. I think we will need to revisit that. We will need to speak to each other.
But it also illustrates the bad blood
even
that
before,
exists.
Of course, the airboarding continues, but we will need to stop it. Otherwise, Museveni will sit at his stool there and he will see us elbowing each other and he will be happy.
For me, let's not use internal contradictions.
My disagreement with the colleagues in opposition is to criticize Museveni and use Museveni's excesses to explain away our own weaknesses. We will need to sit down. In fact, for me, before this dialogue of Adonai,
no, it's not mine. It's
I am using
the religious council.
I am using it because you are the one who is in the government, who is here, not that you are. So we will need to have that discussion. We had disagreed on many things, including the approach. I remember the whole discussion in FDs whether elections work or they don't work. There are those who said they work. So that will need to happen first.
Would you ever sit with Njala for national dialogue?
In life, you will sit with everybody. People who were abusing Museveni yesterday, they are now key in his government. I keep teasing them that the thing you're saying about Museveni has he solved them.
Well, you are winding
so
up.
You may have
yeah,
no
I take up.
I told you here. I saw.
Semujju.
I saw one.
Semujju, you're eating into his
I'm
time.
sorry. I saw one of the people saying that by Besigye being kidnapped from Kenya, he was trying to recreate himself, and then they meet in Ruzira. So we are all victims. So we just have to speak to each other.
No. I think let's not trivialize this. You'll never stop having internal contradictions. You'll never stop having internal rifts within parties, even across board. Even when we are all on the opposition, we disagree on principle on a few things, but we all agree that there are national problems that we all, at least we all agree, are problems facing this country.
Yeah, but if you're not coalescing, then there is a problem.
I don't believe we are at such a level where we cannot talk.
But
We have talked here before elections, within the country, within elections, here and beyond. He knows for a fact. And we have agreed on several issues. The only problem came in electoral politics. The challenge came with positions. Whenever issues of which constituency should be taken by who came in, then it was all lost. Actually, the only sober people were us who are not hungry to be leaders. Actually, the spoiler was elections. But this country is beyond elections. The problems that we have are not in electoral cycles. And the mistake we make, that most of the dialogue, you realize, comes towards elections. Then, where you are sitting to discuss national issues facing all of us, then people start negotiating on positions and constituencies.
You want to come in?
If I may, what killed the iPod, similarly, is for leaders negotiating positions.
And money.
First positions. That is how the UPC was swallowed, through iPod. That is how DP was compromised, through iPod. These are the big questions, not internal problems per se.
The big bottleneck is about trust.
yes, I think trust within the opposition is no trust. Trust between parties, I think the big
Trust towards the
government,
the other party.
the other party,
yes.
and once that can only be worked on by neutral people. I think the Elders Forum was a good innovation, and the Interreligious Council, and I think Dr. Uganda and others are thrashing out modalities of a dialogue with the Interreligious Council. I think we need to entrust. You'll never get this from our society. You'll never get completely people who are neutral 100, but people who are respected, like him and others, to really lead this process. But also, I think there will always be a government in power.
Do you
in
feel,
one stage.
Do you feel Uganda's image on the global scene is being tarnished by Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi in exile, making appearances on TVs?
No. I think with you do a comparative study, Uganda in the context of the region. I keep on emphasizing that. Post-elections, there's elections in many countries. I think there is stability. You can call it a facade, you can call it, but there is stability. The government is running. Uganda is playing its regional, role. You have seen the big infrastructure deals we are doing with Kenya. You have seen our troops
the
in Somalia.
opposition challenger is on the run.
He's not on the run.
And you feel you're comfortable.
He is not on the run. He says he is on a break and is coming back. And look here, he's of course meeting his supporters. He's trying to, of course, discredit the government. I mean, look at the talking points he was having in Washington. Soldiers at my house, no longer there. And he confirmed leaders are being released, and I think the issues are here. The issues are here. However much you go to Washington, and look, you go to Washington and visit members of Congress and officials of the State Department, and there are no photos. What does that tell you? They don't want to get involved in internal affairs of Uganda.
He was at Capitol Hill.
Yeah, but with the building? Did you see him meeting Congress? Did you see him meeting congressmen and women? I didn't see the picture. Maybe they are internal confidential NUP documents.
So you want to see pictures?
Yeah.
What more do you want to
prove? In the era of social media, his publicity team, I can guarantee you, if he had met the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, it would be on the headlines here. If he had met senior people in the State Department who were willing, I think lobbying has, the point I'm making, lobbying has its limits, especially when you are trying to create a situation that is not on the ground. These people have embassies here. They know what is going on.
So is Kyagulanyi painting a true picture of what the country looks like?
He's painting a picture from his perspective.
Is a representation of what the country is. That you can be a presidential candidate who cannot campaign freely, that you can be a presidential candidate whose home can be surrounded, wife abused, you know, the whole house put upside down. A presidential candidate who is not secure, who is not secure, especially against a CDF, if we are to go about his utterances. You cannot take that lightly.
Honorable Semujju, how much do you have as the opposition? How much void do you have to fill with Besigye incarcerated and Kyagulanyi in exile?
You mean the two are the opposition in Uganda?
Well, they are the vanguards of the opposition.
First, the ordinary supporters associate with these leaders sometimes more than the institutions. I agree with you partly. But those of us who are not in prison and are not in exile, we will need to play our part and do it pretty fast. There are things that in Uganda, when I joined politics 2011, things that were happening that are no longer happening, but we will need to continue testing. Because when I joined, it was easy to go and organize a rally, speak to people and go home. Today, they can't allow you to organize a rally. Or if they allow you, if you are going to meet people of Karere, the rally will be in Bombo. So there are things that have changed. But for us to, so that space we need to fight collectively, we need to fight for it. Go and address a rally, have a program, see how much disruption will happen to it. But after election, of course, the way they went, people are demoralized, they win, they are cheated. We will need to restore the confidence of our own leaders first before you ask them to go and do some work. So yes, there is work because when you go to the university, there are people who will automatically follow.
But do you see this on the cards of the opposition?
We are having meetings. We just finished the retreat of PFF at Besigye's residence. I am told the colleagues also had a retreat. Some of the things we do, we may want to do them away from the media. But it's not that we are at home sleeping. Are we doing enough? No, we're not doing enough.
Yeah, but with the apparent acrimony in the opposition, this bad blood.
We will push each other to ensure that we do. I have told you that in life, even if you have had problems last week, you will want to forge forward. And for me, one of the things I have said, I want to avoid spending much of my time on the negative things that have happened and identify the positive ones such that we can move forward. So we will have meetings with the people, whether we like them or not. And that's what I keep telling colleagues in opposition, that one day you will come and take over government. You're not going to chase NRM from Uganda. And you have to behave like a Mandela did. They need to feel safe in your hands. And you can demonstrate that by the way you conduct yourself. So there are also people in NRM. I remember in the last parliament, there are people in NRM who are positive that we had started speaking to, even visiting them. We went to visit Tamaranda, who was NRM in Mpigi. At my residence, I think there is a woman MP from Fort Porto. They all came, such Kuba and others. So that interaction is ongoing. We will intensify it because it's not only us who want a peaceful transfer of power. Many of the people, and Museveni knows it, that they don't go to him because they think he's the greatest leader who must rule until he dies. But at least now he controls the resources. So he knows that it is resources that are pulling people towards him. So we need to do a lot of talking to ourselves even before we speak to Adonia. And that I can assure you we are going to be doing. The results of these meetings that we are holding, you will see very soon.